Each year, we reserve a chapel to celebrate the joy of generosity. This year, our Bible reference is 1 Timothy 6, 18 and 19. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up for themselves treasures as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of life that is truly life. Paul is encouraging Timothy to teach believers to take hold of life that is truly life by being rich in good deeds and by being generous and willing to share. Generosity pops up all over the place within the DTS community. Very, very generous family. And it is our desire that the students of DTS experience the joy of generosity while you are studying here. It is our hope that each student will then carry this joyful experience into your ministries and share it with everyone you minister to. If you want to know more about this topic, don't miss the brown bag following chapel today in Campbell 110. It's going to be led by Scott Talbot, as they said in the announcements, and you will be generously treated to lunch. It is my privilege to introduce our Generosity Chapel speaker today. He is one of our professors who models generosity. Dr. J. Sedwick serves in a number of ministries, and he and his wife Lori have joyfully helped establish the Evangelical Seminary of West Africa, a new seminary and ministry outreach in Liberia. Dr. Sedwick is the chairman of the Educational Ministries and Leadership Department. He has for 40 years been a youth ministry leader, and combined with 27 years on the faculty here at DTS. He is a THM graduate of DTS, and he holds a master's and PhD from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He serves on the board of the Society of Professors in Christian Ministry. He also serves as vice chairman of the board for World Link Ministries, which is a church planning and pastoral training ministry. Jay has been teaching youth at a large Dallas area church for the past 30 years. Jay met his wife, Lori, while they both attended summer school here at DTS in 1986. They've been married for 38 years. They have 4 grown children who are walking with Jesus and 5 amazing grandchildren. Would you please join me in welcoming Dr. J. Sedwick?
Well, good morning. I get set up here for a second. Well, today is the annual Generosity Chapel, as Kim has just let you know that. And last year, Kim Till, our vice president for advancement here at DTS, demonstrated generosity by giving away a $5 bill to everyone who came to chapel in person. She then challenged us to think about how we could use that blessing personally, or we could bless someone else. I'm sorry, but if you came today expecting to get money from me today, it's not going to happen, okay? I'm sorry. Sorry to disappoint you. But we only have 4 weeks until finals. The end of the semester is near. I cannot think of a better way to illustrate generosity than to give you some valuable time back in your schedule. So to that end, teach truth and love well. You're dismissed. April Fools. Today is April Fool's Day. If you didn't know that, some of you have probably been pranked already today. My prank was a little lame, but the origin of April Fool's Day. No one really knows where it came from. I find that odd. Did a little research. There are several theories, but I'm going to select the one that I think has the best shot. European countries used the Julian calendar, which celebrated the new year at the end of March and early April. But Pope Gregory VIII in 1582 decided to switch to a different calendar, and he declared January 1st to be the New Year date. And hence we now have the Gregorian calendar named after Pope Gregory. Problem is, not everyone got the memo. Some people continue to celebrate New Year's in late March and early April. And these people were mocked mercilessly and called April Fools. And we believe that that's where the tradition came from back at that time. Well, the Bible has a lot to say about fools. In fact, our English Bible, the word fool appears 360 times. And 100 of those in the book of Proverbs alone. Recall the rich landowner in Luke chapter 12. He was busy planning to accumulate more and more treasure, more stuff for himself here on the earth. But in that parable, Jesus calls him a fool. Why? Because Jesus says that very night, he would die and his life would be required. And then who would own and have all of those possessions that he worked so hard to acquire? Solomon, in all of his wisdom, had many things to say about foolishness and had many things to say about wealth and riches. In Ecclesiastes 5:15, he states the obvious. He had come naked from his mother's womb. And so he will return as he came. He will take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hands. We came in naked, we leave naked. We came in with nothing, we leave with nothing. Pretty sobering words. Words that we probably all need to hear. Many people accuse the church of only caring about money, and sometimes rightfully so. One so-called church leader posted just last week on X, formerly known as Twitter, that if you send in $1,000 before Easter Sunday, God will provide 7 specific blessings for you. I don't know if any of you saw that. It was quite comical. Despite that, the Bible does have a lot to say about money. There are over 2,000 verses that talk about money, wealth, possessions, and stewardship. It's one of the most frequently mentioned topics in the Bible, more than faith and prayer combined. How you manage what God has given you reveals a lot about the condition of your heart. At the end of that same pericope that I referred to in Luke chapter 12, in verse 34, Jesus says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." This is a topic that we must address because it is central to who we are and how we live. And if you're going to be a pastor and you're going to be a church leader, and I pray most of you who are studying at Dallas Seminary will, you cannot avoid this topic. You cannot avoid talking about money and possessions and wealth and poverty and all these things that we face individually and as a society, because the Bible addresses this issue repeatedly throughout its pages. Well, I want to lay a little groundwork for the concept of generosity. So I'm going to present to you some research. I hope your eyes don't glaze over. I'm going to present some research to you on the concept of generosity gleaned from the book, missed that one, The Paradox of Generosity. What a provocative title. The Paradox of Generosity by Christian Smith and Hilary Davidson, who are researchers at the University of Notre Dame. I'm going to read real quickly the first two paragraphs of the introduction. Generosity is paradoxical. I want you to listen carefully. Those who give receive back in turn. By spending ourselves for others' well-being, we enhance our standing. In letting go of some of what we own, we better secure our own lives. By giving ourselves away, we ourselves move toward flourishing. This is not only a philosophical or religious teaching, it is a sociological fact. The generosity paradox can also be stated in the negative. By grasping onto what we currently have, we lose out on better goods that we might have gained. In holding on to what we possess, we diminish its long-term value to us. By always protecting ourselves against future uncertainties and misfortunes, we are affected in ways that make us more anxious about uncertainties and vulnerable to future misfortunes. In short, by failing to care for others, we do not properly take care of ourselves. It is no coincidence that the word miser is etymologically related to the word miserable. The paradox of generosity should not be surprising. Solomon says in Proverbs 11:24, one person is generous and yet grows more wealthy, but another withholds more than he should and comes to poverty. What does the word generosity mean? A couple of things. First, definition, the virtue of giving good things to others freely and abundantly. It does not only apply to your money or your treasure, so to speak. It applies to some other things, as we'll soon see. And it involves a disposition to give liberally, and the actual practice of giving away. What do generous people give? They give their time, their talent, their treasure, and their attention. See what I did there? And we'll come back to these later. So let's look at some of the research findings. Here's the first one. Volunteering. We're going to look at 4 specific areas. Volunteering, giving your time. As you volunteer, you experience generosity. Those who volunteered, this is from the research, those who volunteered their time, on average 5.8 hours a month, were very happy. They did this very elaborate study and interviewed all kinds of people, and they found that all of these findings statistically significant. If you're trained in statistics, you understand what that means. These are real findings that are verifiable and testable. If you volunteer, you are more likely to be happier than the folks who do not. And in the text, in this book, they actually call the folks who are not generous the ungenerous. We don't want to be in that category. We want to be the generous, not the ungenerous. Voluntary financial giving, not compulsion, but voluntarily giving financially of what the Lord has blessed you with. Those who gave 10% or more of their income scored very happy on their test and on their scale. Very interesting to me. Also, in the area of relational generosity, those most relationally generous with their attention and emotional investment in family and friends were the ones who were very happy. People who were giving of themselves to the folks that they loved, the folks that they were around, experienced greater sense of happiness. And then the last area, neighborly generosity. Those who weekly practiced hospitality, friendliness, and expression of care to others in general were also very happy. I'm going to read a few quotes from the textbook that I think are very helpful for us to see. Regular practices of generosity that are repeated over time and involve some amount of ongoing intention and attention have the capacity to form people in ways that increase their happiness in life. Rather than pursuing the most their money can buy, and then some, generous people tend to simplify their lifestyles and live modestly within or even substantially below their means. Because they desire to live generously, they are aware of their resources and handle them carefully. Generous people are noticeably happier, even though they do not have the perfect, this is a careful one to listen to. Generous people are noticeably happier, even though they do not have the perfect families, dream homes, or jobs, let alone the full bank accounts that their less generous counterparts point to as the alleged key to happiness. From their study, they were able to show that that is not the case. The scientific evidence tells us quite clearly that practicing generosity is good for people. It's good for the givers, and it's good for those who receive. Generosity has significant causal power to change people and the world. Very, very interesting study that they conducted that confirms what I hope you already know and that I and many of you have seen in your own personal life. That as you give, you receive. As you give, you enjoy. As you give, as Kim said earlier, you experience the joy of giving. And it is good for you to do so. And the scriptures tell us that. Well, Kim already read my passage for today when she introduced the chapel, but that's okay. We're going to look at it again. 1 Timothy chapter 6, the specific three verses are 17, 18, and 19, where Paul instructs Timothy this way. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed. Just a few verses earlier, Paul lays out some very specific things. He's talking to Timothy specifically, but also to the church in Ephesus where Timothy was leading. He reminds Timothy that being content coupled with godliness is a means of great gain in verse 6. And then in verse 7, he repeats the words that Solomon that we quoted earlier in Ecclesiastes 5:15, and also words that Job uttered in Job 1:21, where he says, "For we've brought nothing into this world, so we can't take anything out of it either." And then Paul questions the pursuit of riches or wealth, and he says that it often leads to ruin and destruction in verse 9. The issue is not that wealth is bad, but that the love of wealth leads to all sorts of evil. In fact, Paul warns that it can lead people away from the faith and into pain and into grief in verse 10. Now, I don't know if you've ever played the lottery. I hope that you're not doing that on a regular basis, not a good, wise stewardship with your money. But there are a whole lot of people that play the lottery because they think that playing the lottery is going to solve their problems. They're going to have more money than they know what to do with, and it's going to meet all their needs, and they're going to have happiness because many people think that money buys happiness. It does not. In fact, I'm hopefully showing you that generosity buys happiness in many ways. So consider, back up, sorry about that. Consider William Bud Post III. In 1988, he won $16 million in the Pennsylvania lottery. His windfall led to a series of misfortunes, however. Within weeks, he spent $300,000 on a liquor license, a restaurant, a twin-engine airplane, even though he didn't have a pilot's license, An ex-girlfriend successfully sued him for a share of the winnings, and his own brother was convicted of plotting to murder him to gain his inheritance. He accumulated debts and eventually declared bankruptcy. He lived on food stamps and a modest amount of money until he died in 2006. Or consider David Lee Edwards. In 2001, he won $27 million Powerball jackpot. And within a few years, he squandered his fortune on luxury cars, mansions, and extravagant spending. By 2006, he was penniless, living in a storage unit and struggling with drug addiction. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 58. These are just two. I did a little research on lottery winners. It's amazing how most of the people who win these lotteries, their lives are destroyed. I'm sparing you from some of the more gruesome. You can't believe how many of these people were killed, murdered for their money, family members plotting against them. Money does not buy happiness, but generosity can. These are just a couple of examples. If you are putting your hope and your prayer in possessions and putting your hope and prayer in getting a lot and having a lot, I hate to say it, but you are literally wasting your time. Well, how do we know that riches are not bad? Because Paul focuses on the wealthy in verses 17 through 19. He does not condemn or disparage them and or their wealth. Instead, he instructs the rich not to be arrogant in their wealth or with their wealth. You can think about people who are arrogant with their wealth. Just turn on the television. Read People magazine. You look at the celebrities in our world who are very arrogant about what they have, and they think it makes them more important than others, and it does not. Paul instructs them not to put their hope in the uncertainty of their wealth. Their hope has to be, and your hope and my hope has to be, in God and God alone. Because it's God who gives all things to us to enjoy. The rich should not feel guilty for being wealthy. Paul does not condemn them, but instead should be thankful for the blessings of God and the opportunities that God gives them to bless others. Well, what should the rich do with their wealth? Well, for verse 18, they should understand that their wealth is a means to accomplish good works. He continues by saying that those who are rich should be generous, specifically in the text, and be ready to share what they have for the benefit of the church and the property and the people that they can bless. Well, some of you might be saying, Jay, this doesn't apply to me. I don't have any money. Well, we're not just talking about money, but let me show you very quickly a little world map. This map demonstrates the wealth of the world and where it is concentrated. You see the very dark green country there that represents the United States. We are the wealthiest country in the world. You have the privilege of living in the wealthiest country in the world. And it's not even close. It's not even close. So the next chart shows gross domestic product and per capita income. It's a little hard to see because it's small, but I want to show you the top two. The United States, obviously at the top, this is last year's figures, $25 trillion gross domestic product. And the closest next competitor is China at almost, not quite 15. Almost half away from where we are in the United States. Average GDP per capita is $75,400. Jay, I don't make $75,000. Some of you do, some of you don't. Many of you will at some point. All that to say, this does apply to you. It applies to me. It applies to all of us. We actually live in a time and a place where being generous should be easier than it has ever been before. Give you a couple of examples of amazing generosity. Have you heard of R.G. Letourneau? Some of you, anybody here go to Letourneau University? There might be a Letourneau grad in the room. Out in Longview, He had little formal education and he dropped out of school at the age of 14. He worked as an iron worker, a mechanic, and a welder before he started a business in the early 20s. He developed new types of earth-moving equipment, including motor scrapers, bulldozers, the first self-propelled scraper, and during World War II, his company supplied the U.S. military with over 70% of all of the earth-moving equipment, contributing significantly to wartime infrastructure. He founded R.G. Letourneau, Inc., became a major competitor in heavy machinery, influencing companies like Caterpillar, among others. And after an accident early in his career, he rededicated his life to Christ and saw his business as a way to serve God. Here's an interesting, this is why I was attracted to his story. He practiced reverse tithing. Some of you may have heard this story. He gave away 90% of all of his income and only lived on 10%, supporting Christian mission, education, and charitable organizations. He founded Longview in 1946 to train World War II veterans when they returned in technical skills. He supported mission aviation, built churches and hospitals, and funded evangelistic efforts all over the world. Died in 1969. And he left a huge legacy of faith-based business ethics and innovation. And I want you to read one of his quotes. "The question is not how much of my money I give to God, but how much of God's money I keep for myself." It's a great quote. Not how much of my money I give to God, but how much of God's money I keep for myself. Or consider Andy and Joan Horner. That name might be a little bit more familiar to some of you, especially those of you that are here on campus. Andy Horner and his wife Joan founded Premier Designs in 1985. That was just one of many businesses that they ran, but it was a direct sales jewelry company and founded with a focus on faith, service, and giving back. Their primary motivation for starting the company was to support Christian ministries and to help women, especially stay-at-home moms, earn extra income while balancing their family life. They were deeply committed to philanthropy, channeling much of their company's profits into supporting various Christian ministries, educational institutions, and charitable organizations worldwide. Their generosity left a lasting impact on numerous organizations, including, I'll just list a few, Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. They built the Horner House over there in 2009. Dallas Baptist University. They established the Joan and Andy Horner Ballpark that was funded by, the Joan Horner Communication Building. First Baptist Church of Dallas. They gave the lead gift for the large construction project that took place down at First Baptist Dallas. Opened in 2013, and Joan Horner's name is on that building. First, Baylor University Medical Center. The construction of the Salmons Cancer Center, which also houses the Horner Chapel, and even Dallas Theological Seminary, the construction of the Horner Administration Building. Beyond these major contributions, they supported lots of missionaries, Bible teaching institutes, schools, camps, hospitals, and orphanages all over the world. Their legacy of generosity continues to inspire and demonstrate to all of us how to be generous. Obviously, they had both of these two gentlemen, and there's others, had great capacity financially to give. There's other ways to give. But one of the other points of the Paradox of Generosity book that I wanted to make is that it validates the truth of verse 19. Storing up for themselves a treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of what is life indeed. Those who have riches bless others by being generous. They in turn lay up treasures in heaven and reap benefits in this life as well. One of those benefits, borne out by the research, is better health. The research demonstrates that generous people typically enjoy better physical and mental health, as well as a better sense of purpose in life. So what are some of the areas that you and I can be generous in addition to our finances? Well, we need to be generous with our time. That's an easy one, or is it? If you're a Dallas Seminary student, being generous with your time is not so easy, right? We all have 168 hours in a week. I challenge you to think about what are your time wasters? What are the things that you're doing with your time that prevent you from being generous with your time? How many of you have ever said, I just don't have enough time? I wish there was more time in the day. I am out of time. Time is a finite commodity. We all have the exact same amount. Yet some people are a lot better at managing their time than others. Paul tells us to make the most of our time because the days are evil. We need to consider how we use our time because the giving of our time in a variety of different ways is a huge and tremendous opportunity for us to be generous. But if we are so focused on ourselves and so focused on what we're trying to accomplish in and of and for ourselves, we cannot be generous with our time. We can also be generous with our talents, our gifts, our skills, and our abilities. In Colossians 3:23 and 24, Paul says, whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord rather than men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. Paul also says in 1 Corinthians 12:7 that to each of us we have a manifestation of the Spirit is given for the benefit of all. We all have been given certain gifts, spiritual gifts, and also talents and abilities. And we have an obligation, I believe, to be generous with our talents, our skills, and our abilities, to use them to minister to and to help not just the body of Christ, but the world that is around us. And we've already talked about this, but we need to be generous with our treasure, with our money, with our possessions. Many of you, if you haven't studied the gift lists, you may have passed over this one, but in Romans chapter 12:8, Paul specifically identifies the gift of giving, the spiritual gift of giving. And I know that Kim and her team search for those people all the time. Where are the folks that have the gift of giving? But just like the gift of evangelism, just because you may not have the gift of evangelism, does that exempt you from evangelizing? Does it exempt you from sharing the gospel? Of course not. We're all commanded to represent Christ and to tell people about him. We are all commanded to give and to be generous. Some people have a special enabling to give, and I believe that those people are given a special measure of the things to be generous with because their attitude is appropriate and they understand where all of that comes from and what they are to do with it. And then we also need to be generous with our relationships. Actually, with our attention. Paul expressed relational attention and commitment that we should all emulate. In 1 Thessalonians 2:8, having so fond an affection for you, we were well pleased to impart to you not only the gospel of God, but also our own lives, because you had become very dear to us. Paul's relationship with the Thessalonian believers was so special, and he gave of himself. He very clearly states it. He gave of himself to them so that they understood his love and care and relationship for them. And obviously, when Jesus tells us in John 13:35, by this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. We are to be generous with our love and with our care and with our support for other people. So here's a question. Are we practicing generosity? There's an annual report called the Giving USA 2024 report. Now, again, I apologize, some more statistics and figures. This is the longest running and most reliable data source on charitable giving in the United States, with some disturbing trends. Giving to the church is declining. Total charitable giving in 2024 was $557 billion. That is a lot of money, obviously, but it is declining. Church giving declined from 63% of total charitable giving to a new historic low of 24%. Now, let me explain that to you. This particular report is looking at how much of the charitable money is going to the church versus all manner of other type of organizations like the Sierra Club and the United Way and all these other nonprofit organizations. How much of people's giving is going to the church versus these other places that are asking for your money? How many of y'all answer your telephone today? I mean, non-stop and constant solicitation, right, for your money. So it's declined from 63% to the church down to a low of 24%. Most view their church giving as simply one of several giving options. And the most significant concern is that givers are rapidly shifting their giving away from the church to other forms of nonprofits, and not Christian nonprofits like Dallas Theological Seminary, to all manner of other nonprofits, many of them associated with climate change and a variety of other kinds of things around the world. Giving is also trailing inflation. The church's purchasing power has decreased by over 4% over the last 3 years. Only 5 to 10% of households provide 2/3 of all ministry funding. You think about your church, you think about the people that come to your church, that means 90% of the people in your church, most of those folks aren't giving anything. In fact, the research that they found, they said 48% of all the people that attend your churches don't give a single dollar in an entire year. So many of the people in your church do not understand the concept and the ministry of generosity and the benefits of being generous for the church, for people, and for themselves. And here's a little bit of a disturbing situation. Givers over 80 years old provide a significant share of the ministry funding. The folks that are in their latter years of life who have been blessed throughout life, they understand usually a little bit better about what being generous really means, and they're willing to give away, but they also have a lot of the wealth, and they're giving it away. And if we are not teaching and training and helping the folks in our churches, in our ministries, understand generosity, all of our churches and our ministries are going to be in a very, very difficult situation. Generosity remains flat. Individuals gave just 1.9% of their disposable income in 2023, which has remained consistent for the last 40 years. That astounds me. Only 1.9% of disposable income. Increased wealth has not changed the percentage of our income. Lest you think that the more you make, the more you give, oddly, it doesn't work out that way. People making less than $12,500 a year, by the way, that puts them below the poverty line. They, on average, give away 2.2% of their income annually. It's not a lot, but you would think that as your income increases, you would give away more of your income. But people making over $90,000 per year give on average just 1.1% of their income away annually. It is not correlated the way we would think that it should be. Higher income does not translate into giving larger portions of that income away. This is amazing to me. There are over 400,000 new nonprofit organizations formed just in the last 10 years. No wonder your phone is blowing up, right? People looking for money, looking for you to part with your treasure specifically. Competition for philanthropic dollars will continue to rise dramatically, only making Kim's job harder and her team to raise the money that God uses to bless this place, Dallas Theological Seminary, and make it possible for me to have a job and for you to be a student here at DTS. Well, can we reverse some of these trends? What can we do, if anything? Well, generosity is a byproduct of how effective your church grows disciples. I want that to sink in for a minute. Generosity is a byproduct of how effectively your church grows disciples. If you want to see your church flourish, if you want to see generosity demonstrated, then you've got to help people develop as disciples. There's a large church that was studied. Those who are engaged in small groups focusing on Bible study, spiritual formation, and communities cared for and encouraged others.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all of your strength. When I read this verse,
that was good. I'm really lucky that that's what it said. And I am going to wrap this up, but I apologize. They didn't start the timer. So I still have 30 minutes on the timer. And I have no idea what time it is, and I'm looking, oh my gosh, we've got to wrap this thing up. Let me just say a couple more things and we'll be done. Sorry. We found that people who were involved in small groups and spiritual formation and communities that cared gave 3.5 times more of their disposable income than those who were not. Pretty huge. We got to develop strategies, to increase engagement in worship, teaching, fellowship, evangelism, and service. These are important bedrocks of our ministries, and we've got to emphasize them for people to be generous in their giving. Generosity is correlated with maturing disciples. So how are you going to give of your time? One of my challenges. Are you making the best use of your time so that you can bless others? Are you using your talents that God has given you to bless others? Are you managing your treasure in such a way that you have the ability to bless others? And are you giving of your attention to those who need to be blessed? It should be a lifestyle commitment. Generosity should be a lifestyle commitment for all of us because it's an ultimate blessing for us and for the benefit of the church. And just to remind you as we close, the ultimate example of generosity. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the time that we had this morning just to look a little bit at generosity. Lord, it is an expression of your character and your love for us. Help us to understand it better, to realize that where our treasure is, there our heart will be also. To understand that you are the treasure, not the things of this world that you give us to steward and to manage. Help us to do a better job so that we will honor you, that we will have an opportunity to bless others, and in blessing others and blessing our churches and our ministries, that you would in turn bless us. Thank you for the ultimate expression of generosity and the giving of your Son. And Lord, as we approach Easter, help us to contemplate that in a new way and to appreciate it more deeply and to focus on it. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.